Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
We appreciate all the support on our recent content. And before we do get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yes, we're here. We're back at it again with another video. And today, because the All-Star starters are going to be announced pretty soon, coming up this week, we figured we might as well put out our All-Stars, right, since we hadn't done it yet. And we'll start with the Western Conference, I guess, just to kind of, go with the flow. And so I'm going to start with the starters, and I'll go first and just kind of name guy at a time. So I'm going to go with SGA, right? And he's, I think right now, the favorite to win MVP, right? Obviously, Jokic is out. He's been hurt. We'll see if he meets the game's shared requirements. You don't really need a lot of explanation for this, right? He's having a great year. Especially earlier in the season, he was playing the best basketball of his career. Still shooting great from three. Still super efficient, right? 60% effective field goal percentage, 60% on twos, right? Obviously does great in the fourth quarter, right? OKC's now gotten back to their winning ways after they had a stretch where people were kind of questioning, hey, what's going on with this team? But he's at the helm of it, right? He's the captain, right? He's the guy that leads them to all these wins. So this one I think is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. I have him as well. I had nothing more to be really said about the best player in the league for sure. So yeah, I have him as well.
Yeah, and to be honest, I feel like our starters probably will be uniform. I think there could be one guy. There could be one person.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think there could be one person that could be a little bit different. And then after that, I'm gonna go with Jokic, right? Obviously he's hurt. He's out right now, but prior to him getting hurt, he's playing the best basketball of his career, right? Helping lift this Denver team up, right? He's averaging 30, 12, and 11, 60 from the field, 44 from three. Just ridiculous. Obviously now, I think kind of surprisingly, Denver's been able to survive with him, right? There's another guy on the team that might pop up on this list at some point. But just in general, he's been great. Pretty much in every stretch of the word. Just get back soon. Hopefully he can come back. Hopefully he comes back and maybe doesn't get kicked off of All NBA. Yeah. That'd be kind of weird to not see him on it at all. You do have to play enough games, but like I said, these are the two best players in the league. So it's like, as long as they're healthy, they're going to be all-stars, starters every year.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're starting with those two guys because obviously I have him as well. I think there's no debate. Enough said for arguably another one of the best players, in the league, and some people have him as number one, and I don't hate it.
Yeah. Then after that, let's get a little bit different. So, looking at my list of all-star starters for the Western Conference, I actually zagged a little bit, and so I went with Steph actually as an all-star starter, just because I think he.
Oh, okay.
I told you we were gonna have it.
I was gonna say there's the one guy probably.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and the thing is, like, to be fair, right, I don't have any problem with him not being a starter, right? Just because, like, obviously you look at where they are in the standings, they've been playing much better as of late, so there's a chance for them to climb up. But this team has not been very good this year. They have been playing better as of late, but if he was not playing and he wasn't on the team, they'd be absolutely horrible, right? He's at 37, putting up 28 and 5. And I feel like he probably will be in the all-star starting group, I think. But like I said, I don't have any issues with anybody not putting him on there. So
yeah, I don't have Steph there, but like I said, I do understand your reasoning, and I think he might probably get voted in as a starter just based off of the name in itself, right? Like that's nothing new. We've seen that happen before, but I'm just gonna go with the guy who I think deserves it. Not to say that Steph doesn't, but I just think the numbers are a little bit more eye-popping and all-star worthy, right? I'm going to go with Luka Doncic. Obviously, we all know, what he brings to the table, as a player. I think some people have him, top three. Some people have him a little higher, and I'm not mad at that either. Lakers tumultuous season, I think, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, right? Especially on the defensive end. Not sure what that squad's got going on. Just lost to the Hornets recently, but I think Luka in himself, what he brings to the table offensively is great. Defensively, we all know that he has his very bad moments for sure. But nonetheless, I think you can't really complain about that when he gives it, 110% on the offensive end. We already know the numbers, so it's I think it's a no-brainer here.
Yeah. He's definitely over the last few seasons, I think, become a more polarizing star. But like you said, like the level of production that can't be denied,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, he's leading the league in scoring 34 a game, 9 assists, 8 boards, and kind of helping try to keep this team afloat, right? Where they're, like you said, they're going through a pretty rough stretch right now,
Yeah.
obviously. But like, if he wasn't playing, it would probably be even worse. So, you got to factor that in there. So after that, I'm gonna go with another guard, and gonna go over to the land of Minnesota, right, and pull out Mr. Anthony Edwards, who I think has had a fantastic
Hmm.
year this year, right? We know some of the weaknesses in his game last year, right? Like everybody was talking about, the mid-range percentages haven't been all that great, right? The post-up game, even though people weren't really requesting that he had a post-up game, it's a nice thing to have given his size and his frame, right? And he's pretty much weeded all those issues out, right? Like in terms of his 2 point percentage this year, way up 56%, right? Has pretty much weeded out the mid-range issues in his game. Still shooting 40% from three on 8 attempts a game. So he's become a more well-rounded offensive player. The assists are down, but I think if you watch the games, just like his ability to command the offense has continued to improve, right? And like they have other guys on the team contributing offensively, so you don't have to have him have a ton of assists. And it's impressive, right? Because they don't really have a traditional point guard. It's basically Ant who's the point guard, kind of running the offense, right? Kind of sharing it with Julius Randle, who's also had a really good year. So I think he's going to be in there. He could be one of those guys where it's like he's like the first reserve, but I have him in my starting group.
Yeah, I have him there as well. I think it's a no-brainer, right? This is a career year for a guy who's, had like you said, a monster season, and he just keeps getting better and better each and every year, right? The efficiency through the charts or off the charts, really. 3-point percentage still up there, a little bit less volume than last year, but still great numbers, all around. And I think the playmaking, the scoring, even the defense, it's all there, right? It's the full package, and I just can't wait to see him continue to progress. And yeah, he's a starter for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I also had Luca, to be fair, right? So that pretty
Oh
much
wow,
matches up for the same reasons you said. So
cool.
that's my starting five.
Okay.
So I
I had
guess,
one more. I had one more.
yeah, yeah.
I know people might not like this one, but
Okay.
it's Wemby. I think
Yes.
what he's been able to do, what the Spurs have been able to do. Definitely have to bite the bullet on that one. Definitely thought that they were going to suck. Well, not suck,
Yeah.
but be
Me
worse.
too.
Be worse. Probably playing team, if not worse than that. But here they are, like the third seed or whatever they are at the moment. Yeah, it's just wild to see the progression that team has had, and I think his numbers, and what he brings on the defensive end, night in, night out, irreplaceable, all-star worthy, and I think he should be a starter based off of that.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to swap out Steph and Wemby, perfectly fine. Perfectly reasonable. Wemby's been great.
Yeah.
So like you said, that's a team that we have to take the L on. We
Oh
both
yeah.
took the under. And like you said, it's not that we thought they would stink, but I think it was just, does the fit work? Is he going to be healthy? Right? How many games is he going to play? Can they survive with him out? And honestly, they have. Right? So like the progression of these young guys, and that might be a lesson from here on out. Like in terms of like young team looking to take a leap, you might just have to take the over like pretty much every time.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when we move over to the East, there's going to be some teams that fit that bill as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then we move on to the reserves of the Western Conference,
Oh
right?
boy.
So I'm going to start with Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets. Think he's been able to keep this team afloat while Jokic has been out. And honestly, before Jokic went out, I thought he's been playing the best basketball of his career. One of the wild things to see is, I guess with the increased usage and reliance, like his passing and his playmaking, right? He's averaging 7.5 assists per game. The turnovers are basically the same, right? The efficiency has been great, right? 45% from three on nearly 8 attempts a game, right? For the team that right now, like they're the 3 seed, right? Like if you're some of these teams that are below them, you got to feel pretty rough because they've been without multiple guys at different points and they really haven't lost any ground at all. And Murray's been a big part of that. Everybody talked about in the summer, like he needs to get in better shape. He needs to be ready for the season. And he's pretty much lived up to the billing. And like I said, there's been some games where it's kind of Steve Nash-esque, like in terms of like all of a sudden he's like getting, double doubles in terms of points and assists. He's had a couple of 16 and 17 assist games. So just super impressive, especially considering I think we were all kind of assuming, and it still could happen, I guess, but we were all kind of assuming with Jokic going down and some of these other guys out for a while, this team might be cooked in terms of falling into the play. Obviously, shout out Peyton Watson as well because got Western Conference Player of the Week, which would be, to me, one of the more unlikely Western Conference Players of the Weeks.
Yeah.
So got to shout him out. But, this is about the All-Stars, so
Yeah.
Murray definitely is in that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And quick little shout out to Peyton Watson for sure,
Yeah.
because the month he's been
Mhm.
having, it's just been wild. But yeah, Jamal Murray is also on my list as well. I think you can't really have a 2026 All-Star list without mentioning this guy, right? And shout out to him. This will be his first All-Star appearance, because I think everybody knows that he deserves this. They're a high seed. The numbers are there for sure. And I think, in previous years, he's been a little bit overshadowed by, the success of Jokic and the team success as well. But this year, I think he's having a great individual year, and he's shining with and without Jokic. And I think that in itself is a complete nod to his All-Star performance.
Yeah, they're definitely going to need him to continue to play at this
Yes.
level if they want, to be able to contend for the title. So moving on to another reserve. So we're going to move back up to the 1 seed for Oklahoma City. We're going to give him 2 All-Stars. We're going to give him Chet Holmgren, right, averaging 18 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2 blocks. There's been some stretches where, Hartenstein's been out. He's missed some time this year. Obviously, Chet's also played some time at the 4. And in some of these games, especially recently, like, he's had some great defensive performances. Like against the Rockets, he caused a lot of problems while he was out there. He did, get into some foul trouble. But just in general, he's the guy, I mean, they've had a lot of young players get better, but with J-Dub out due to his injury for most of the year, Chet has definitely stepped up on both ends of the floor. And part of his progression on the defensive end has helped Oklahoma City be the best defensive team in the league by a decent margin, right? Obviously, they've had their ups and downs for a little bit, but I think he's been a pretty good constant there, and I think he's well on his way to being first-time All-Star.
Yeah, I have him as well. I think we mentioned him, in our video where we were talking about potential first-time All-Stars, right? And I think, the numbers might not be eye-popping to a lot of people, but I think the defensive impact and also the efficiency and the progression on the offensive end is what really is special to me, because, in previous years, the efficiency was kind of a little wonky. And, last year, very small sample size, but this year I think he's handled things very well, especially anchoring, this Oklahoma City defense, down low. So, and like I said, offensively, shooting the ball great, added a lot to the bag for sure, and like I said, more efficient. So I think automatic All-Star, especially for the number 1 seed in the Western Conference and number 1 seed overall.
Yeah, so now I'm going to move down a little bit lower in the Western Conference, and I'm actually going to give 2 spots for this team in terms of All-Stars. So Houston,
yeah.
and I'm going to go with Kevin Durant, and I'm going to go with Alperen Şengün. I think
sir.
both of those guys have had fantastic seasons. We'll start with Durant, right? 26, 5 and 4, shooting 40% from the field, 50 from the field, and then 40 from 3, 50 from the field, almost 90 from the line, right? Helping them on the defensive end as well, right? They're one of the better defensive teams. I'm not sure offensively what's happened to the team as of late. They just can't shoot all of a sudden, even though they do have some good 3-point shooters.
Yeah.
But I think Durant's been a constant for them in more ways than one. Şengün, obviously, he missed some time due to injury. Since he's since come back. And prior to his injury, right, he was playing great. A little bit of a slow start, but I think he's been better in these last couple of games. So they're definitely going to be on. They're both going to be on the All-Star list for sure.
Yeah, I have both of those guys as well, right? And one of my most watched teams this year. Offense just fell off the freaking map. Like you said, I don't know what happened, but very reliant on Kevin Durant, hence the numbers, right? That's why they look like they do. And, as usual, the guy's just dropping straight buckets. But overall, yeah, team success, I'm a little bit concerned about what they're going to look like potentially in the postseason. But regardless, regular season wise, at this point in the season, both those guys and their play has definitely earned them All-Star positions.
Yeah, so now we move on down to the play-in area. We're going to look at Phoenix, the Phoenix Suns, giving them an All-Star spot.
Yep.
I think this one should be a given.
Yep.
I mean, we'll see how many people put him on there. But Mr. Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns, right? Not shooting well from 3 at all, 30%. But just in general, 25 points, 4 rebounds, 6.5 assists, right? For a team that pretty much no one really had in the conversation of potential playoff team. We did take the over on the Phoenix Suns. We did like what they did in the offseason. But even with all that being said, I don't think we probably felt like, oh my gosh, this team could just be a potential top 6 seed. I don't know if they will be, but Devin Booker has been pretty big constant. Obviously, all the other supporting cast members that they have as well, right? Like Dylan Brooks. I don't think he'll be an all-star, but you could make him an honorary mention, I guess. And then some of these other guys, Royce O'Neal, Mark Williams. But it starts with Devin Booker, right? Where he's been, I think now that the Suns have been good this year, I think he's back in the good graces of a lot of NBA fans where everybody was like, what happened to you? Like I said, I don't know what's going on with the three-point shooting. Maybe it's just the composition of the roster in terms of you don't have a lot of creators. But the fact that they don't have a lot of those type of players makes it kind of impressive that he's still able to kind of put these numbers up.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a lot of times, especially late in games, where it's like, all right, Booker, you're getting blitzed. So you're going to have to kick it to, like a Dylan Brooks or like a Royce O'Neal, who's not like a great ball handler. Right. Or, Gillespie's had a really good year. But, just like in general, looks like a completely different team from last year. And I think, Booker still being bought in is a big part of that. Because like I said, most people thought they were going to stink, and they do not stink. This is a solid basketball team.
Yeah. I have him as well. I think, a bounce back year for him. Very, very quietly, though. Underappreciated for sure. And I know the 3-point percentage is a little bit down, but I think he's made up for it in a multitude of other ways, right? It's translating to wins, and I think that's something that this team didn't really, yeah, exactly, and this team didn't really have in mind, right? I don't think we had them, stacking up a whole lot of wins in that column, but I think you have to attribute that to Devin Booker's bounce back and a little bit of a resurgence as one of the best players in the league.
Yeah. Then moving on for the last couple of spots, right? At least for me. So we're gonna move down to the Portland Trailblazers. And I'm going to put former Washington Wizard, right? Your favorite team, obviously, Mr. Denny Avdia.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Who he's playing at a level that even people that were high on Denny Avdia, I don't even know if Denny Avdia, thought he'd be playing this well.
For real, bro.
Yeah, like averaging 26, 7, and 7. With good efficiency, right? 47 from the field, 36 from 3. Getting to the free throw line like 10 times a game, right? Which, is not the most free throw attempts a game, but just his game, just in general, like the fact that they don't have a point guard, right? Like for most of the season, like Scoot Henderson's not played a single game. Drew Holiday started the season. He got hurt. He's since come back. But for most of the season, they've been putting the ball in his hands, and he's delivered a lot in these games. I mean, the Blazers record, they're the 9 seed. They're slightly under 500. And this is, again, kind of like Phoenix, another one of these teams that I just don't think a lot of people really had a lot of belief in, especially given, like I said, the injury situation with their guards. But Avdia's kept them afloat, and he's been, pretty much everything that you could ask for when the Portland Trailblazers traded for him and then some. Like, if their record was better, like he could be in the All-NBA discussion, like just based off of how he's been. But, I think he's going to be a first-time All-Star.
Yeah. I had Denny as well. It was a tough down to the wire fight between somebody who's going to be left off my list, which I think should be an all-star, but that's how saturated the league is with talent. But yeah, Denny is in here for sure. The dude has just been balling, like you said, on a whole nother level. As a Wizards fan and seeing a guy blossom like that who was on my team, I saw the dark ages of his career, right? Where it's like the guy was relegated to a spot up and he guarded, the opposing best player, right? And it's like, that's kind of all I ever thought he could be potentially. But a lot of people said, just let him rock, right? Like, just give him the keys to the offense. And that's kind of what they've done over there. And he's honestly like one of the best point forwards in the league at the moment. So shout out to him. And yeah, like you said, he gets to the freaking line a lot because he drives so much. I think he drives honestly the most in the league, and hence the nickname Turbo. Like, everybody from Washington knows that. So shout out to him, and I think he deserves it.
Yes. This one was a tough one because there's so many good, options that you could have. But I'm going to have to move up in the standings, and I'm probably going to have to take a guy that I don't know if he'll get on there, but I do want to shout him out because I actually think he's been very good this year and somewhat underrated. Mr. Julius Randle of the Minnesota Timberwolves.
He has been really
because
good.
You look at what he's been doing this season, 23.7 rebounds, just under 6 assists a game. And Edwards has actually missed more time this season than some people have realized. Like, he's not missed a ton of games, but just, the fact that Randall, him and Ant have this really good partnership where just offensively, right, it's really clicked. It's honestly worked, I think, a lot better than you would have expected. Like, the 3-point shooting isn't crazy, but just the fact that, like, he's been a constant, he attacks, he does compete on the defensive end as well, right? And, he's a big part of that bully ball style of play that Minnesota has adopted over the last couple of seasons, and just wanted to shout him out because I think he's had a really good season. I do think, like I said, there's other guys that are definitely deserving as well. I kind of wanted to try to avoid picking from like a bunch of players that were like outside of the playoff contention, right? So I'm sure like you might have a different guy there that might be on that list. But yeah, I think Randall's been really good. And
Yeah.
just based off the laugh, I'm gonna assume I'm probably right.
Well, yeah. Shout out to Julius Randle because this spot came down to 3 people for me. It came down to
Mm-hmm.
Steph,
Mm-hmm.
Kawhi, and Julius
Mm-hmm.
Randle.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go with Steph for the reasons that you for the reasons that you know had him for a starter, right? And I think it's
I forgot you
self-explanatory.
hadn't even mentioned him yet. I didn't even realize you hadn't mentioned him.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, Steph is my last guy. So once again, shout out to him. Consistent, Mr. Consistent, right? The 3-point shot is there. They're winning games now, which is good. I think that kind of helped with his case here, right? And I know you probably don't want to translate wins to being an all-star, but I think it does matter a little bit, right? And that's kind of why I think he edged out Kawhi in this situation because Kawhi has been having a freaking wild season, right? Like,
yeah.
he's averaging like 28, pretty much the same numbers, right?
Basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, you could argue Kawhi, but it's like the Clippers suck so bad. They suck worse than the Warriors. Like, I think I hate, the freaking Clippers more than the Warriors at this
They
point.
might be back.
I know. They have been winning games.
Yeah.
But team still stinks. So I'd rather give it to Denny and Curry there, But yeah, you do have to really shout out Randall because it's tough because if you look at the standings, right, a team that high up should have 2 all-stars in theory, right? But I don't know if he's going to get in just based off of, the fan vote and other factors as well. So we'll see what happens. But I think you have to have Steph in there just because he's playing at a good level. Not starter level for me, but still good enough.
It's just wild, right? Because I remember it was top notch, right? Where he like quoted, the Ty Lue thing where he was like, yeah, we got to finish 35 and 20, and it's like, well, they've been doing pretty good. I think they were like, what, 6 and 21?
Yeah.
So since then they've gone.
Yeah, and shout out to Harden and Kawhi because I'm telling you they've been
that's another
balling,
guy.
and you can't even have Harden on this list. You can't; it's too saturated.
And yeah, I think what was it? I know when we did our first time All Stars, like we mentioned Keontae George, as another guy.
Yeah, they're too low in the standings, though, man. They're way too low.
Cooper Flag, same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anyone on like Sacramento or New Orleans?
No,
I mean,
God,
like,
no.
I think what was it? I think it was like some people were kind of giving buzz to like Trey Murphy being like an All Star or whatever.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, I mean, he's been playing like great, but like you said, they're 10 and 34.
Yeah,
so you're just probably not getting an All Star for a 10 and 34 team. Although, when we get to the East,
oh yeah,
coming up next.
Oh boy,
yeah,
I can't wait for this. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, exactly. So might as well do that right now. So those are our Western Conference All Stars. So now we'll move over to the East, which has been kind of a wild ride this year. So for the Eastern Conference, so I got, like the West, 5 names. So this one, this one is gonna be interesting, right? Because I guess might as well just get Giannis out of the way, right? Because he's been playing great. It's not his fault that the team is horrible. He was hurt and he missed some time. That's something that I'm probably gonna take a victory lap on, but just in general, 29 points, 9.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists. Some of those are down because I think he's been on a minutes restriction. But the fact that you're averaging almost 30 points a game in under 30 minutes a game is crazy. And you're shooting 65% from the field. He's actually shooting 40% on threes, although very low volume. But like I said, it's not his fault the team is horrible. But like I said, I'll just mention him and get him out of the way.
Yeah, I think,
just in case he gets traded, potentially to the West.
For sure.
Yeah, but not saying he will, but still.
Yeah, I have him as well. No explanation really needed. Bucks suck, but Giannis does.
Yeah, so moving on. Now we'll go to move up, way up in the standings to the 1 seed. Detroit Pistons, Mr. Cade Cunningham. You, sir, are an all-star starter this year,
sir.
Right? Averaging 26 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists. 3-point shooting isn't great, but they don't have a lot of 3-point shooting, and he's kept their offense afloat just with the way that he's been able to play, pick and roll, attacking smaller players, right? Getting into the spots in the mid-range, right? Like I think many times we've called him an ethical hooper. He's averaging 7 free throw attempts a game. But just in general, right? Like, and also even defensively, he competes on that end, right? Because Detroit's one of the best defensive teams in the league, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, he's been part of that.
Yeah.
But just in general, right? He's been great, and this Pistons team has been better, I think, than we all thought. Like, I took the over on the Pistons, um, but that was kind of a zag. I think most people were lower on the Pistons going into this year, and I think that's understandable given who they lost, and also given how much belief you could have in the team, and just factor in like Jaden Ivey has been a reserve for
Yeah.
most of the year, right? Because he had the broken leg, and he's come back and he's not been himself. He's been better as of late, so there's good signs there. But just in general, like losing Tim Hardaway Jr., losing Dennis Schroeder, right? Losing Malik Beasley, right? And having to kind of fill in the gaps with all these other guys, right? Like Cade's been great, and just the fact that this team, I remember the first couple seasons we were doing the podcast, they were horrible, right? I think our second year doing the podcast, right? They were the worst team in the league, right? They lost like 28 straight games. So just the fact that like Kate Cunningham's been a constant there and he's been so good for them, just incredible, right? Like just the fact that they're the one seed. Like I said, even for somebody like me who picked over on them, couldn't have imagined this.
Yeah. Shout out to Cade for sure. He's on mine as well. I think there's really, I think you said it the best, right? But what he's able to do and the pace that he plays at and the way that he can kind of just switch things up and control it is unbelievable. Borderline 101. Never really seen it before. So shout out to him, and especially shout out to the Pistons, because I think they're gonna have two All-Stars as well.
Yeah. Next up, moving down a spot to the Boston Celtics. Can't leave him out. Jaylen Brown, right? Obviously, this team is a rival of mine, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, as you know, as a Laker fan. But shout out to Jaylen Brown, right? Where this was a team, this might be the team that I was the most wrong about, right? Because I took the under, thought they would stink, thought it was a gap year, and they just basically took that statement, spit on it, and laughed in my face and said, watch this. Jaylen Brown averaging 30 a game, 6.5 rebounds, 5 assists, kind of doing a Jason Tatum impression. And it's not just that he's getting more opportunities to shoot and score. He's actually gotten better as a player. This is his best year as a pro. He's basically been a superstar this year for a team where, like, going into the season, looking at the talent, you're like, this team is okay. This team might be all right, but not close to one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They don't even play at a fast pace. They're one of the better offensive teams. Obviously, he's a big part of that on both ends of the floor. So it's been just absolutely incredible to see, right? And like I said, even thinking that he could up his production, I still didn't really expect that. Plus, like the lack of like great options at the big man spot. Like they lost so many key players, including Jason Tatum, and he's been able to keep them afloat this year and then some. Because I mean, they're right there, and I mean they're the 2 seed right now. Of course, the standings are close, but just the fact that they're even in that conversation, if you ask somebody that going into the season, I mean, there were people who left comments who thought we were underselling Boston. But even then, I don't know if they thought they'd be this good.
Yeah, and honestly, he's on my list as well. So did have to get that out the way. But
Yeah.
honestly, if they were like the number one seed in the East and honestly number one seed overall, he might like actually have a legitimate case for MVP. Like that's how good
Yeah.
he's been freaking playing. Like it's been wild, and I don't think anybody saw that coming. But
Oh,
shout out, yeah, shout out to him because he's been playing at that Finals MVP level that I think we know that he could have gotten to, but I didn't think he would be able to do it with this kind of team.
exactly. Yeah, that's just kind of crazy, right? But that's. I mean, he's lived up to the billing, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them. Like, do they do anything at the deadline? Does Tatum come back? If he does come back, what does he look like? Does that give them a potential chance to contend in the Eastern
Yeah.
Conference? This one I feel like could be a split because I could see it going either way in terms of who you lean, who you pick. For this one, um, I went with Tyrese Maxey, right? Just in the sense of like when you look at Philly, I mean, they've been kind of weird this year, but like without knowing at all what to expect from the Sixers this year, one thing that has been a constant has been Tyrese Maxey, who's been awesome for the Philadelphia 76ers,
Yep.
right? Averaging over 30 a game, almost 50 from the field, 40% from three. He's playing 40 minutes a game, basically. He's leading the league in minutes. They've had a lot of games where they've gone down to the wire, and he showed up in so many of these games. Just shout out to him. And like I said, if you watch them, like Embiid's been way better. I remember when we saw them in person And, he put up offensive numbers, but just comparing him back then to what he looks now, it's different. Paul George has fit in pretty well. So, they're like a solid, decent team. It's still hard to put your full trust in them in the postseason. But like one thing definitely is for sure is like Tyrese Maxey is the future of this team, where it's now his team. You watch them play and they run a lot of stuff through him. And shout out to the other guys for kind of taking a step back and, like allowing it to be his team because he's earned it.
Yeah. There's an interesting conversation to be had about Maxi because I feel like we've always liked his game, and I think we had an interesting take a couple of years ago where it's like where we felt that Embiid might have been, I don't want to say holding back, but there were times when it's like you could tell that Maxi's development might have been staggered a little bit just because he wasn't Mr. Number One. Right, but that's a conversation for another day. I don't have him as a starter. Maybe that's
Mhm.
crazy. I don't know. Y'all can
Oh,
let me know in the comments. But I do have another guy, another point guard, in the Eastern Conference, Mr. Jalen Brunson. I think what he's been able to accomplish this season alongside the Knicks has been great. Wishy-washy play from the team as a whole. There are
oh,
some
God,
wild quotes, but I'm not
the
going to
couple
get into
of
that.
tricks, yeah.
Yeah, man. But he himself, I think, has had a great season, career year in terms of what he's been able to do, especially on the offensive end, right? And adjusting to a new offense and still looking pretty good is a
Mhm.
feat. I think that not as many guys can really say that they've accomplished, and I think the numbers speak for themselves for him. So yeah, he's a starter for me.
Yes. And I reacted and made a face because I just saw Maxi Kleba starting for my team in 2026. So
Oh
moving
boy,
on,
GG's man, it's
I
rough.
also have Jalen Brunson as well. And for pretty much all the reasons you've said, like you said, it's a new offense, it's different. And it's been a real struggle for them recently. Obviously, unfortunately, now he's gotten hurt. So hopefully he can come back relatively soon, right? But prior to his injury, right, I thought he's once again been Mr. Consistent, right? Averaging 28 a game, 6 assists, right? And I remember we got a comment on one of our shorts where it was almost like they were kind of saying like he's not really that great, right? Like, no,
I
I
know
mean,
what you're
like,
talking
what was
about.
it? It was like, yeah, like they were comparing him. They were like, yeah, he's no Shea or Luca, but or whatever. And it's like, yeah,
Well,
okay,
well,
maybe he's not,
yeah,
but he's still awesome.
yeah.
He's still
We
really
we
good.
knew that. We knew that he's not a Shea or Luca. What are you trying to
Yeah,
say? He's still a great
yeah,
player.
right, yeah, exactly. And the Knicks would not be in the spot that they are without him. So obviously, he's going to be in there. And he's had another great year, right? Just and again, one of the coolest stories in the NBA, right? Just the fact that he went from a guy who was good, right, but you would have never thought he would be a franchise player.
Mm-hmm.
And just the fact that he's a franchise player for this Knicks team, like I said, it's been rough for them recently, but they're still hanging around in that top 3 spot. So we'll see where this goes. But yeah, so those are my Eastern Conference All Stars
Yeah,
starters.
I have one more guy.
Mhm,
I don't know if this one's going to be considered polarizing, but it might be. It's
mhm.
Donovan Mitchell. I have Donovan Mitchell over
Okay.
Tyrese Maxey. I know that's been a little bit of a debate here and there, but I think what he's been able to do this season, with a Cleveland team that's been very, very hurt, very, very inconsistent, very, very awkward. Never seen a step back like this, in terms of, what they've looked like. I just thought they would be a little bit better, a lot better than this, actually.
Yeah.
You
Took
know,
the over. It was like 50 something wins.
exactly. So, thought they would kind of pick up where they left off, best offense in the league, da 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 da. But yeah, we haven't really had that. But Donovan Mitchell stayed pretty consistent, right? And what he's been able to do, pretty much averaging 30 on great efficiency, right? 40 from the three, about 50 from the field as well. So, shout out to him being, multiple things for this team, right? Not just being a
Yeah.
scorer, being a playmaker, being a defender at times, right? So, yeah, I think he gets in over Maxi for me.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with that because, like you said,
Cool.
like he's been putting up really good numbers as well. They just beat the Sixers twice. So if you're somebody who's like into the idea of like the wins, right,
Sure.
mattering, then that's perfectly fine as well. And he's had a great, like I said, it just stinks that the Cavs haven't been the same team. I mean, I guess they've won 7 out of their last 10 games. Just you got to see more,
Yeah.
from that team, right? It's still been just a weird season, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, like just the fall off from they won 64 games last year to right now they may not even be a top 4 seed. They may not even have home court
Very
in the
true.
first round. We'll see where that goes. So now we'll move on to the reserves. So moving back to Detroit, Jalen Duren, right? We've mentioned him many times. We said this is coming. He's going to be a first-time All-Star for the 1 seed, and it's not just that. Oh, well, he's on the 1 seed, putting up whatever number. So that's why he gets to be on there. It's like, no, he's been very good this season. He's been elite. He's been one of the more underrated centers, one of the better centers in the league this year, right? Double double machine, 18 and 11, super efficient, short roll god, right? Just in terms of being able to make reads and find other guys for a team that's not like a crazy talented offensive group, right? And defensively, he's answered all the questions in terms of like, could this guy be like your centerpiece defensively, right? Because the Pistons last year with him, right, I think they were 11th in defensive rating, but there were questions and concerns about, is he a real rim protector? Like I said, can he really be the quarterback for your defense? But they're second in the league in defensive rating this year, right? And like I said, his progression on both ends of the floor has been a big part of Detroit being one of the nastier teams in the league this season.
Yeah, for sure. I have him on my list as well. Kind of goes without saying, right? This is Cade's, Robin in the situation, and it's a match made in heaven, right? These guys, the way they operate the pick and roll, it's beautiful, right? And you already talked about it. Guys are walking double double, so you add on all the extra stuff. I mean, it's pretty much just the sweet stuff on top, and I think
Yeah.
he's deserves it.
Yeah, and like I said, I still remember when we saw him in Vegas in the summer league playing next to Wiseman, right? Where like he's putting the ball on the floor,
Yeah,
kind of like, experimenting with a face-up game. And it's
yeah,
like, what is this guy doing that for? But it's like it's interesting to watch,
for sure.
to see him do it. And now like it's all coming together where it's like, yeah, like I said, it's been pretty cool to see,
Yeah.
just kind of wild like when you see some of these guys like when they're in their earlier stages and
Hmm.
now that he's developed and like I said, he's on his way to getting that big contract
Yeah.
too, right? So like
Great lob
good on
threat
him,
too.
I guess, for not signing the extension then, because now he's going to get more because
Yep.
he's going to be an all-star.
Yes,
He's going to be a
sir.
max player.
Yep.
So moving on, I have Donovan Mitchell as well. I mean, I could have just started with him, but I didn't.
It's
But
fine.
it's basically for the same reasons as you, right?
Cool.
Where if there's one good thing you can point out with the Cavs season other than Jalen Tyson, it's been Donovan Mitchell, right? Where it's just, he like you said, he's been a constant for them, and he's had to take on a more offensive uh, scoring load this year, right? With Garland being in and out of the lineup earlier in the year, not having the same type of shooters, and again, he's still proven why he's one of the better players in the league. It just stinks because we'll see where Cleveland goes, but it hasn't looked great for them this year. But it feels like that they are playing better, so we'll see if they can pick it up.
Yeah. Um, I agree. Obviously, I had him a starter, but I have Tyrese Maxey coming off the bench for the reserves. Same reasons as you mentioned, right? The numbers just really speak for themselves, and like I said, you can make the case that he should be a starter, but the usage rate and the minutes is kind of wild for him. But
Mhm.
that's kind of to be expected, right? When you give a guy the keys to the offense, I think it's hurt the development of some other guys on that team, but at the same time you can't really complain when it's translating to wins and individual success here in this situation. So nothing to really hate on here.
Mhm. Moving on to the North. Toronto
Mm-hmm.
Raptors giving them an All-Star,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Scotty Barnes.
Oh,
You're going to be an All-Star again. I know you might have a different option. We'll see, but I do think that he's had a really good year this year. 50 from the field, 3-point percentage is down from what it was earlier in the season, but it feels like that he's been super impactful for them. I know Ingram obviously has been very good as well, so I don't have a problem if somebody has him there, or maybe you have both of them on there. I'd be curious to see that. But like just in general, like him being, taking another step forward, especially defensively, has helped keep the Raptors afloat because they've had some, they got off to a really hot start. It's been kind of rough more recently, but they also don't have a center. It's Colin Murray Boyles, who we actually really like as a rookie, who's basically been the starting center, kind of tag teaming with Scotty Barnes. And I think he's been, and I think Barnes, like he's kind of coming back to showing people like, hey, this was a guy where just a couple seasons ago, everybody was kind of hyping him up as this, a guy that you could, kind of build a really good team around. And now I think he's kind of showcasing like you put more talent around him with Ingram, and some of these other guys. Like this is a good team.
yeah. I don't have Scotty Barnes, but I do have
Mhm.
another fellow Northerner. I have Brandon Ingram, right?
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think he's had a interesting season, and it's good to see him back in a winning situation, right,
Mhm.
or a close to winning situation. Don't know how people feel about the Toronto Raptors. I feel pretty good about them. Odd team,
Yeah.
but it's still translating to wins, and that's what you love to see. They do have some things to figure out, but Brandon Ingram is not one of those things. He's figured it out, right? Offensively, he's doing everything that you would want him to do. He's clutch as well. That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
And even defensively, there's times where he looks pretty engaged, and I think that's just kind of the culture that they've set over there. So shout out to him. You know, he's averaging around 22, 47 from the field, 35 from the three. Also aggressive on the rebound, so can't really hate it.
Yeah, this is a team that I remember, we were kind of trying to figure out what does this look like? How do they make it work? And I think we took the over because we thought, okay, there's a way that they can make it work. It's just going to have to, come from within with some of these guys. And they found a way to make it work. And like you said, it's funny because I think there was kind of a negative reaction at the time to that deal, even though like they got nothing, like they gave up nothing to get Ingram, right? It was like Bruce Brown, and Olenek, I think, and maybe like a future first or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
to get Ingram. So they gave up nothing to get him. And like you got a guy who could be an all-star. Like I said, I
Exactly.
didn't have him on the list, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's there. And it's like this is kind of the argument for why like it's kind of hard to hate on like getting a guy like this for nothing because it's like you have to buy into the talent and hope that he can reward you. And like you said, he's rewarded them. Like if you're a Raptors fan, like you do that 10 times out of 10. I think they'd be pretty happy, with the situation they're in right now compared to the last couple of seasons where like they didn't look very good
Oh
and they
yeah.
didn't necessarily look like that, things were moving on the way up. Although to be fair, I think there were also a lot of Raptors fans who said, "You guys don't know what you're talking about. Like we've not seen this team super healthy. Watch what happens when they're mostly whole." And I think that's where they've kind of lived up to it this year. So
Yeah.
now, I guess moving on to another pick, Norman Powell of the Miami Heat. You are an all-star. He could have been an all-star last year. I didn't really have a problem with him not being it, but he could have been one. But this year, honestly, he said, "You know what? I might be even better than I was last year." Right? For a team that doesn't have the same type of offensive talent next to him, right? Like, like obviously for the Heat, like you got Bam, you have Hero, but like you don't really have a Harden, you don't really have a Kawhi Leonard on your team. And like you said, like Ingram, there's been a lot of moments this year for Norman Powell where he's made some big shots for them, right? Been super efficient. Just and just at the age, right, where it's like he's 32 and he's having the best year of his career. Just you don't really see that a lot, from a lot of those type of players, right? And he's been, even though the Heat have, kind of fallen a little bit since their early hot start, right? He's been consistently really good for them.
Yeah, shout out to him as well. I have him on my list. I think it kind of goes without saying, right? And I think, yeah, in the Eastern Conference, it's a little bit easier to pick guys like this, and guys like first time All Stars and people in this situation, just because, we know that it's not as saturated as the Western Conference. But regardless, not a slight to him. Having a great season and a great year, and what he's doing down there, they would be far worse without him.
Yeah. So moving on, I'm gonna move to the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm gonna mention you, Mr. Jalen Johnson, but I'm watching you because just
Oh,
because in these last few games, I don't know, it hasn't looked the same since the Trey Young trade. I
okay.
could, I mean, he's had some good games, but like just in general, either way, he's an all-star.
Yes.
He's averaging 23, 10, and 8. And you look at the Hawks team like this is the guy that they're going to be building around now that they've moved on from Trey Young, right? Shooting 35% on from 3, 8 assists a game, as you've mentioned, very good at finding shooters, right? Like you look at the guys they have on the roster, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, all these guys, they're not Jalen Johnson merchants per se, but just the fact that like, it allows the ball, he allows the ball to move, the offense is humming. They've been pretty ugly in these last few games. They've had some pretty rough blowouts to some of these teams, including, I think, before we got on, they were getting annihilated, I think, by Boston. I think they were down like 30, 40 points
Yeah.
at one point. So, we'll see where that, ultimately leads us. But either way, I think, he's kind of one of those guys that everybody's been talking about this year because it feels like, now that he's been healthier than last year, now this is a true breakout year where he's been even better. So, I think, like I said, he's going to be a first time All Star in the Eastern Conference. And he deserves it because he's been awesome.
Big time. I've
Mhm.
loved everything that I've seen from him. He's also on my list as well.
Mhm.
23, 10, and 8. That's wild. I think no matter
Yeah.
what, I don't care what you look like on defense, you're getting into the All-Star game. Like this guy sucks at defense. I don't know what happened, but regardless, Yeah, very, very underrated player. I think, there's obviously been more conversations about him because of the Trae Young trade, but regardless, the buzz is deserved. And like you said, bad, bad, bad last 3 games. But let's kind of take those
Yeah.
out of the picture for a second.
Is Trae Young merchant possibly?
No,
Who
I
knows?
think he's good.
No, no,
Yeah,
no,
he's
he's
good.
not.
He's
He's
good.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's good.
yeah,
He's good. Yeah, it's just interesting. But like I said, it's just something to watch out for because, like I said, now it is his team. He will be the focus for defenses. But either way, like he's been real so good, like to the point where it's like it might just be a lost year for them, but like he's gonna be the bright spot, I
yeah.
think.
I
Either
agree.
way.
Yeah.
So, we'll see if they give their pick to the Spurs. But then moving on, moving back to the New York Knicks, I'm gonna mention Karl Anthony Towns. Little bit of a down year, I would say, compared to last year, where like you could argue last year was one of the best seasons or the best
Yeah.
season of his career. Unless you want to argue one of the early Minnesota years, but just in terms of like being on a winning team and being a big reason why, I think you have to factor that in as well. This year, it's been a little bit different. There are certain nights where if you catch him, he looks like he did last year. There's other nights where you catch him and you wonder what the heck is going on here, right? Like you said, as of late, it's been rough for the Knicks, right? They had the game where they lost to the Warriors, and I think it was Mike Brown after the game where it didn't really seem like he was kind of, defending Towns a whole lot, right? Where it was like, yeah, it's like a hard Draymond foul. It's like, oh, that's Draymond. That's what he does. He's like, but I did see Towns pick up that fifth foul, and it's like, yes, every night there's going to be at least a couple fouls that'll make you shake your head, that'll make you question, why am I watching this? What am I doing with my time? But then there's other nights where, like I said, he still makes some amazing plays, especially on the offensive end. So he's still an all-star. It's just it is a down year, I think, for him this time around. But I guess for now it's okay because the Knicks, are still doing, are still up there in the standings. But it's just something to watch as they go on because they're going to need to come out of this funk that they're in because they've had a lot of games now where defensively it's been bad. Obviously now Brunson's hurt, so you're going to have to probably dig a little bit deeper, find some ways to win. And it's been rough recently, right? I think before we got on, they lost to Phoenix, or
Yeah.
while we were on, they lost to
Yes.
Phoenix.
Yeah. I have him as an all-star as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot could be said about this guy. I think this season has been very inconsistent, and I think the numbers show for it. Right, the efficiency shows for it. Right. But the foul trouble is getting on my nerves, man. Like I watch the Knicks, a decent amount, and it's like whenever I'm watching the team, he borderline has 4 or 5 fouls a night. It's
Right.
ridiculous. So I do understand that, but we're talking about why he should be an all-star, not
Right.
why he's being inconsistent. But 20
Mm-hmm.
and 11 is pretty good, I think, for a big man, walking double-double, as we all know. But the efficiency is down a little bit. But I think honestly, if he had a better season, he probably could have been a starter. I'm gonna be real,
Yeah.
but in
Like
this,
last year.
yeah, exactly. But in this situation, all-star, but definitely a down year, like you said.
Yeah. So now for the last final spot for the All Stars in the Eastern Conference, I mentioned, I didn't want a ton of teams that had horrible records on my All Star team, but I'm gonna have a team that has a horrible record on my All Star team. Mr. Michael Porter Jr.,
Yep.
star of the summer,
Yep.
in terms of, best podcast game in the game, right? Best podcast conversations in the game. Averaging 26.7.5 rebounds, 3 assists, a career year. Even though he's gotten way more opportunities, way more shots, the efficiency has basically stayed the same. And it's been wild to see, right? Obviously, like it's on a bad team, but there's a lot of games where, like, when you watch them play, like he's actually kind of helping them win more than you would think. He's one of the biggest names this year, obviously, because he could be a potential trade candidate. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to trade him. I don't know if they're going to keep him. But either way, assuming he stays in the Eastern Conference, he's going to be, well, I guess even if he gets traded, he could still be an Eastern Conference All-Star, right? I guess. But,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. But either way, he's an All-Star for me. And he's been great in every sense of the word. And if you're the Nets, like, just the fact that you were able to turn Cam Johnson, a guy who most people said, like, last year, trade him to OKC or trade him to some of these other teams. They waited until the summer. You got somebody who's been playing even better and a future first, and you could potentially flip him again for more picks, or you could keep him and have him be, with your core of guys, whatever they decide to keep around. Just kind of insane to see, right? Like, just one of the wildest jumps that I don't know as many people expect. Because I know, like, we've had years where it's like, oh, this guy got traded to this team, like a Jordan Poole a few years back, where it's like he might lead the league in scoring.
Mm-hmm.
But like a Michael Porter Jr., he's not going to lead the league in scoring, but just that he's been this, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have him here as well, and this was honestly tougher than I thought because there were a couple guys that I wanted to put here, but I couldn't. Right, I wanted to put a guy like Josh Giddey there because I think he's been having a very interesting season where he's pretty much one rebound and like one assist off of averaging a triple double. So shout out to him.
I think he would have got in. I think if he was healthy, he would have gotten in.
Yeah, like there's other guys too that you could talk about in terms of health, like Franz. I feel like he might have been able to sneak in there as well, but I think Michael Porter Jr.'s earned it, right? He's just been balling on a whole different level, right? We all know the memes and stuff. Put that aside, the dude is a real freaking hooper, right? And he's garnering so much attention from all these contenders because that's how good he legitimately is, right? If you give him the opportunity, and I think a player like that deserves to have the last spot on our all-star list. And enough said. I mean, the guy is just a pure hooper, man.
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy, right? Because like you said, the conversation about him has flipped so much where, like you said, he went from, I don't want to necessarily say like a joke, but like just in general, just like, he went from like, ha ha ha, Denver traded him, and sent him to like the worst team in the league, and he can just like make podcasts or whatever. And it's like, oh wow, he might actually help save a team season.
For real,
where like a team might have to actually rely on him to help them win some games. We'll see. Like I said, for me, if I'm Brooklyn, if it's less than 2 firsts, I'm not doing it. But I don't necessarily know if a team is going to give up multiple firsts. So I don't know. What do you think? Like, do you think, like, if you're Brooklyn, are you just holding it down and saying like 2 firsts at least, or no? Or, would you relent if it was like 1?
If it's 1, I'll let him go just because that's how desperate I think Brooklyn is for assets at this point. Like, clearly Michael Porter Jr. is not necessarily helping this team garner wins, and they're not built for winning. So why would you even, hold on to him at that point? So, I at that point I would just take the best pick that's available. You know what I'm saying? Like if it's 2, by all means, yeah, I'm pulling the trigger on that. If it's 1, I think you kind of have to just take it.
Yeah, it's tough because, like this year they have their first, but next year it's a swap with Houston. So they're going to have to start winning some games next season. And that's kind of the calculus that Brooklyn's going to have to make, where it's like, do we give up MPJ, maybe get a better chance at the number 1 pick or top 3 pick this year? But then it's like, we just watched last 2 seasons, 2 teams with a 1% chance of getting the number 1 pick. Look at what happened. They got the number 1 pick. So that's a decision that I'm very curious to see what Brooklyn does. But, either way, like he's an all-star.
Yeah,
so
no matter what.
Yeah, and like you said, that's the tough part about the all-star thing is like there's always going to be at least a handful of guys who are going to be left out, right? Where it's like you're good, but you just didn't quite make the cut. So, we'll see what happens. I could very well see some of these guys that we have like just getting kicked off and be like, nope, we're putting somebody else in there. I have no clue. Like I said, it'll be happening pretty soon.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I'm very, like I said,
somebody's getting booted for Braun. I could see it already.
Yeah, and I am kind of curious, like I said, to see where it goes, because I know we've had previous seasons where it's like a Wade or a Dirk or like even a Kobe, like in the last years of their careers, where it's like they're probably not all stars. They're gonna get on. So I am kind of curious to see what that looks like. But we'll find out pretty soon, because like I said, I think the starters are gonna be announced this upcoming week. So it's gonna be fun, and like I said, just the fact that like you got guys that are on 12-win teams that could be all-stars. I don't remember a time that happened like in the last several years, right? Like it feels like usually like if you're that bad, you probably don't have an all-star. But I guess it also speaks volumes to like where the East is at, because it's like no Halliburton, no Tatum, right? Like those are 2 guys who would have been guaranteed all-stars, I would say, right? And then obviously with a lot of the injuries that we've had over the course of the season, like there are guys like, like say like an Austin Reeves, right? If he was healthy, could he have been on the All-Star team? Could have been, but like Josh Giddey's missed too many games. And, since he's not like in that superstar realm, he's not just going to automatically get the benefit of the doubt and be like, well, you've missed a lot of games, but you've been so good in these games. Like say like Wemby misses like 20 games. He'll still be an all-star. Same with Jokic, right? That's just kind of how it is. So it's funny because I feel like after the All-Star weekend, we're going to be like, what the heck did we just watch? because I feel like we've done it every year, but it
Yeah.
always is fun to do the all-star thing,
Yeah.
and always do these lists, just because you just kind of want to see where all the talent is at this
Yeah.
year.
I always like the teams, but I don't know, the events and the games themselves are just
Yeah.
like, all right, dude.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. We'll
We'll
see
get
where
to
it
it.
is. 'Cause like, yeah, because this year you got it's the international thing. So that's I'm curious to see what that looks like. It's
Yeah.
it's gonna be crazy, I think.
Yeah.
So now we close it out like we normally do, and we're going back to our polls. So this was our last one that we put out, and it was tied to the Trae Young to the Wizards trade, right? Because obviously, if you want our thoughts about that trade, you can go back and look at our previous video. So we asked the question of, do you like this trade, right? And it was four options: for the Hawks, for the Wizards, for both, or for neither. 100% said for the Wizards. They like it the most for the Washington Wizards, right? Which I think makes a lot of sense, right? I think we both said we liked it more for the Wizards. You were more in the line of like you think the Hawks got completely fleeced, but I think we both liked it for the Wizards just in the sense of like you're betting on a guy who at one time was one of the best players in the league and you're hoping that he can get more out of some of these guys who do have some really bright futures, but it would be nice if they have somebody who could put it all together, and that's probably what you're banking on, I think, if you're the Washington Wizards, right? And
Yeah.
you gave up very little, right? It was like CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert. Those are guys that probably belong more so on like competing, contending teams, even though the Hawks probably aren't really that this year.
Yeah.
But either way, like they don't really need to be on a team like the Wizards.
Yeah, I love it so much for the Wizards. That, like I said, I think Trey is one of the best floor raisers in the league. There's a lot of guys who benefited from him being their point guard, and I think the Wiz kids are going to benefit from it just as much, if not the most. Right? Like it wouldn't surprise me if duos wise, like Trey Young and Alex are up there in terms of
Right.
statistics. I don't know about wins, right? But depending on what the team looks like, if they do get a top 3 pick, there might be a conversation to be had about that team and that roster. But regardless, I think the Wizards take home the W in that trade, no matter what way you look at it.
Yeah, and especially I think what I also kind of added on was like I need the Hawks. I need to see what the Hawks do from here on out, right? Because like just this team with Jalen Johnson, right, and like you're just swapping out those guys. I need to see them do more. So I am
For sure.
curious. We'll probably as we get closer to the deadline, like look at deadline targets and whatnot. I am very curious to see if Atlanta still continues to do some things out there, right? Because there are guys out there, but I don't necessarily know if they're going to go all in. But at the same time, like I think they do a pick swap with the Spurs. So if they're bad, then the Spurs have a chance at a lottery pick. But it seems like the OKC number one pick crisis might have been averted, possibly. Right? Obviously, the Clippers will still need to make the playoffs, right? Because you're not in the clear just yet. Because we saw the Mavs have the least chance of getting the number one pick, and they got it. So we're not in the clear just yet, but we might be on our way there.
Yeah.
So now, like I said, that concludes today's episode of Off Ball Takes. Again, let us know in the comments your thoughts on our All-Star starters, our All-Star reserves. Do you agree? Do you feel any differently? Think somebody got left out? And let us know, just like the thoughts on the NBA, right? Because we're getting to the point where we're halfway through the season, right? So we can kind of start looking at these teams maybe for what they are or for what they are not. And we're going to be nearing the trade deadline pretty soon in a couple of weeks, right? So if you want to join in on these polls at the OBT podcast, and of course, continue to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.